Testing 1, 2. Please be upstanding for Her Worshipful the Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Beth Rowland and I am the Mayor of Wokingham Borough and will chair this meeting. Before we start, I'd like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. A reminder that members do need to stand when speaking in the chamber. And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Thank you. Are there any apologies for this meeting, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, apologies have been received from Councillor Gary Cowan and Councillor Stuart Munro.
Thank you. And everyone else is here. Yeah, thank you.
Madam Mayor, also apologies from Councillor John Halsall.
Madam Mayor, apologies from Councillor Jackie Rance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline.
Madam Mayor, Stuart Munro is actually on Teams.
Thank you. That's all, no more. Thank you. May I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of May as a correct record? Please, may I have a show of hands? Stephen.
Sorry, can I just raise an issue with the minutes, please, Madam Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
I'd just like to mention that under members present, neither Councillor Jordan Montgomery or myself are listed, but we were both present for the meeting.
Thank you.
So if we can amend that, please.
Yeah, we will do.
Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, that goes for our group as well, the new members in our group. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a show of hands for. Can we have a show of hands against?
Sorry, can we do 4 as amended, please?
Yes, 4 as amended. Sorry. Thank you. That looks like a majority. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? David Cornish.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I need to declare an interest on item 28 due to my position as a Director of Loddon Homes and WBC Holdings.
Thank you. Who've we got next? Rachel, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For complete transparency, I would like to declare a personal interest in motion 502, the motion on the Borough of Sanctuary, as I'm taking part in the Homes for Ukraine scheme. I've consulted with Democratic Services and understand that I can participate and vote on this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to declare an interest in motion 502 as a member of Gossip Girls in Action, Wokingham for Refugees. Again, I understand that I'm still able to speak on this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I declare an interest on item 28, Councillor Cumley is nominated Director of Optalis.
Thank you. Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare an interest which is identical to that of David Cornish under item 28. I should remind the council I'm a non-executive director of Loddon Homes and WBC Holdings.
Thank you. And Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Similarly to Councillor Conway, I'm a non-executive director of WBC Holdings. I'm also a non-executive director of Berrybrook Homes and Wokingham Housing Limited, and I declare an interest in item 28.
Thank you. I haven't missed anyone, have I? Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You didn't miss me. I didn't realise I had to state until another councillor mentioned. I'd like to declare my interest in 502, as I've been homing a Ukrainian family for a year and a half now.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor's announcements. I've got a couple of things to say this evening, and I hope you'll forgive me for remaining seated. The first one is to congratulate two members, not of the authority, but certainly residents in the borough, who in the King's Honours have received MBAs. And the one that's in the council chamber is Councillor Prue Bray. Prue has served this authority and education for many years and well deserves an MBA and sorry, an MBE. You could get an MBA as well tonight if I ever get through this agenda. Thank you, Prue. I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm quite embarrassed, but it feels a bit weird. Say it. And thank you for mentioning me. And I think we have two other residents also honoured in the King's Birthday Honours. Emma Cantrell, the first days, who also got an MBE, and Vicky Robertson, who founded Kaleidoscopic UK and has worked with refugees, who got a British Empire Medal. So I feel like I'm in very good company. They are both excellent people in the borough, and we're very lucky to have them.
I agree with you, and I have written to them all. Pauline.
Thank you. Could I just add our group's congratulations to Prue, very well deserved, and also to all the other members of the public that got honours.
There is someone else that I'd like to mention who received an MBE, and that's Clive Waterman. Clive will be known to many of you in this chamber. He was head teacher at Southlake Primary School for many years, Southlake Junior School prior to that, and has worked with musicians across the borough, being part of and very much involved in WASMA. And without Clive, a lot of our young people wouldn't have had the musical experience that they've had today, whether it be singing or playing an instrument or just performing generally and learning those skills. And I know Sarah Kerr knows Clive quite well as a musician herself, and I'm sure she's as pleased as I am. Sarah, did you want to say anything about Clive?
Gosh, I wasn't expecting you to mention that. No, I mean, certainly having worked with music organisations across the borough, I mean, I think this was the first WASMA that he wasn't involved actually, and the opportunities that he's presented to children from all backgrounds across the years has been incredible. And I know he's very highly regarded across all the schools and loads of music organisations, so very, very well deserved.
Again, he's had a letter from the mayor reminding him that we go back a long time in Woodley. I remember him almost when he was a boy. But there you go. We're on to the next item now, public question times. I'd like to remind executive members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and we will be timing them. To note, I will be extending the time for this item to allow all public questions to be heard, and we have 5 of them. Christina Haig, please would you ask your question to the executive member of Active Travel, Transport and Highways? Christina, do you want me to go on to the next one while you get yourself?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Since the 31st of March.
Please, would you stand?
Don't you know it? Since the 31st of March, I have emailed Messrs Easton, Corrigan, Searle, Chancellor and Milburn with my question, but have had no response from anyone. My question pertains to Biggs Lane and the road safety of children crossing that road to reach Farley Hill Primary School since it relocated. The temporary crossing that we had been using, actually better located than the new one, i.e. closer to the school and further from Princess Marina Drive roundabout, is now gone. Its removal has led to traffic in both directions speeding up between the permanent crossing and the Langley Common Road roundabout. Parents are asking me if the former temporary crossing should be transformed into a zebra crossing, and also what other traffic calming will be put in place to slow the traffic on Biggs Lane. What plans are there to address this? Biggs Lane is now a very busy road and would benefit from additional road markings and traffic calming, e.g. speed bumps. The people in our area would doubtless be grateful if the dangerous road narrowing implemented throughout Arborfield could be avoided. They are an accident waiting to happen, and we want to keep the school community safe.
Thank you, Christina, for your question. I can only apologise if you have not had a response to your question from officers. As you have highlighted, a permanent crossing as required by the wider development of Arborfield housing growth area has been installed and the temporary one removed. The location of the temporary one was positioned where it was only for safety of the users during the construction of the permanent crossing. Much work and assessments went into the developer's planning submission for the Arborfield area, along with walking and cycling routes that were developed, considered and approved by the planning committee. The formal crossing, which has been installed permanently, has been provided by the developers in line with consents and meets the required road safety audits. There are still parts of the wider development that remain under construction, along with additional walking and cycling facilities. Based on the concerns that you have raised, the council's traffic management team have reviewed the speed limits within the area you have highlighted on Biggs Lane. The results highlight that the average speed observed by users are compliant with the posted speed limit, demonstrating that vehicles are adhering to the speed limit of the road and that no further intervention is required at this time. Thank you, however, for bringing this and your concerns to our attention, and we'll continue to monitor it. In relation to your comments on the road narrowings introduced last year as part of the Arborfield Village Improvement Scheme associated with the delivery of the Arborfield Cross Relief Road. This scheme has been designed and delivered in line with the Department for Transport design standards and requirements. These are updated from time to time, and these updates are
Your 2 minutes are up.
Oh, can I just quickly finish?
Have you got? No, sit
Okay.
down, please.
Thank you.
Ms. Haig, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I don't at present, but I can't accept that there isn't speeding on that road. I think your officers obviously weren't in the right place at the right time to observe such speeding. I mean, it took a great battle to get that crossing put in the first place. There was no provision in the 106 agreement on the developer to do so, which is why they pushed back so much as they did. Yeah, it's not a question, but it's an observation that I don't think this is satisfactory.
Thank you.
As I said, Christina, we will continue to monitor speeds on that road.
Thank you. The second question is from Paul Stevens. Paul, will you please put your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for the Climate Emergency, Executive Member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services. Earlier this month, government clarified laws made in 2015. Taxpayers should not be charged for disposing of household waste at civic community sites, scrapping backdoor tip taxes. It was also repeatedly stated that councils should not be charging for such DIY household waste disposal. Under the proposals, household DIYers would not be charged to get rid of waste, including plasterboard, bricks and bath units. Despite this promise from the UK government, RE3, which runs the recycling centres at Longshot Lane in Bracknell and Smallmead Road in Reading, is sticking to the charges, at least for now. As a resident living in a rural part of Wokingham, I can report from significant experience this morning, a bath, 2 toilets and lots of plasterboard. Fly tipping has got progressively worse since the pandemic and shows no sign of reducing. Charging for waste disposal makes no sense if it encourages fly tipping, which then has to be cleared by the council. It creates an unsightly environment, potentially hazardous, and encourages others to add to it. Can the Executive Member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services confirm that RE3 will be dropping their charges for householder disposal of DI waste as soon as the new legislation is in place?
Councillor Shenton.
The question really should be posed to myself because waste falls within the environment portfolio. The RE3 councils, that's Bracknell Forest, Reading and Wokingham boroughs, have taken note of the recent announcement by the Environment Minister regarding charges for the disposal of DIY waste by householders at recycling centres. We understand that new legislation will be introduced this year, allowing for free disposal of DIY waste up to 2 50-litre rubble bags or 1 bulky or fitted item no larger than the approximate size of a bathtub. And that would be at a frequency of 4 visits per household over a 4-week period. While we await the legislative changes, we will assess their impact on the site's operation, make all necessary arrangements, provide further communication to householders in due course. For now, householders who wish to deposit DIY waste at RE3 recycling centres should continue to pay the agreed charges as usual.
Paul Stevens, do you have a supplementary question?
If I might. So are we happy that people are being charged effectively twice to dispose of their DIY waste, once in their rates when RE3 are supposed to be taking it, and then again when they turn up at the tip?
I'm afraid that's not correct, because the DIY waste and the other things which are charged for upon delivery to the waste recycling centres are self-funding. They are not for profit. They do not make a profit and they do not make a loss. So the money that we take, that RE3 takes from householders delivering those things, actually is paying for that specific service only.
Thank you. The third question is from Jim Fruin. Jim, good to see you tonight. Please, would you put your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Over the past few years, successive administrations have informed residents that they are in negotiation with government housing ministers with regards to Wokingham housing numbers. I realise that the revolving door situation of multiple ministers, some only lasting a few days, has made these conversations difficult. My question to the Executive Member for Planning: please provide a detailed update of these conversations, negotiations, including the latest schedule, actions taken and actions planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Since May 22, we have sought to engage with the Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities on how the planning system should be reformed to make it fair to all parts of the country, consistent and understandable to residents and businesses. We have written several times to several different ministers with respect to national planning policy reforms, and our letters are a matter of public record. As you know, in December 22, the government published proposed reforms to national planning policy. Aspects of the proposed reforms reflected our ask, such as the ability to take account of past over delivery of housing. We have cautiously welcomed the proposed reforms, but continue to lobby for further changes, such as housing need is calculated and distributed spatially across England. Whilst the government indicated they would respond to their proposed reforms in the spring, the messaging is now suggesting a response in the autumn. The delay is disappointing, and we will keep reminding the DLUHC of our views. The leader has therefore recently written once again to the Secretary of State for Levelling Up to emphasise the importance of the proposed reforms in providing clarity to and for local authorities on key issues such as passed over delivery in both assessing planning applications and when preparing a local plan. We have also offered the opportunity to meet and discuss the issues we raised with ministers direct, but that offer has yet to be taken up. That offer remains on the table. And finally, despite the government's delays, we are continuing to progress the local plan, and an updated programme will be considered at Executive next week. This proposes the publication of the submission plan in November this year, followed by submission to the Secretary of State in 2024 and examination in public thereafter.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. Jim, do you have a supplementary?
Please, for me. That's very interesting to hear that you're writing about national policy. The question was about Wokingham's housing numbers. Government only sets one housing figure for each administration, this being the minimum number of builds required per year. This figure is publicly available, though it does take some finding. Government also provides a number of complex calculations to inflate this minimum number. Some administrations choose to simply use the minimum number. Wokingham chooses to apply all the additional calculations, and then Wokingham chooses...
Jim, can I stop you, please? I'd need you to put your question, not make a statement.
I have to position the question, but I'll go straight to the question if you want to. During the partnership period, I directly asked the question of the then leader and on the minimum number. He was unaware of the minimum figure. He asked the executive member for planning, who was also unaware. So given that lack of awareness, can you please explain how and what criteria you've been using to discuss with ministers the housing numbers for Wokingham, not national policy?
That's crossing over. My current understanding of the housing number for Wokingham Borough has changed to 795 houses per annum. Regarding those details of minimum numbers, I will give a written reply.
Thank you, Lindsay. The next question is from Emma Webster. Emma, please will you put your question?
Thank you. I'm asking the question on behalf of the residents of Fleur-de-Lis and Wokingham to the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. On the 17th of June, in the early hours of the morning, a motorist travelling down Rectory Road went into the railings at the junction of Rectory Road and Wiltshire Road, causing significant damage to the railings, which had just been repaired after the previous incident occurring at the same junction a few months prior. This is now the third incident in the last 6 months and the seventh in the last few years. When a question was asked at a previous full council, the response given was the absence of information about the individual collisions means that it is not possible to identify factors that may have contributed to the recent spate of incidents. Unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, the motorist at this latest incident neither remained at the scene of the site of the accident nor reported that they were responsible for the damage. So can I please ask, what measures are the council going to take to ensure that So please can I ask, what measures are the council going to take to ensure safety at this junction so that all road users go round the bend rather than through the railings? Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for your question. We understand your concerns about safety of road users at this location and need for measures to prevent further accidents. As we had previously reported through a council question from Councillor Burgess and correspondence with a local resident, that without information about the individual collisions, it's difficult for the council to determine what the causes for these incidents are, and therefore the appropriate course of action that could be taken. Any action that we do take must be appropriate and proportionate. Introducing unnecessary changes to the layout to resolve an issue of driver error may have significant and possible detrimental impact during other periods. Any changes we do make will be deliberate, but also done on a phased approach. We have reviewed all the lining and signing at this location and have introduced new slow carriageway markings on the approaches to the junction. Since the last incident, we have investigated at the location where the vehicles are coming off the road and are planning to introduce chevron signs on the fences subject to the owner's permission. We will also be looking at the curbing at the points where these vehicles have been leaving the road, as it would appear the former driveway was not raised as part of the development. Raising these curbs may help, and we will look to resolve this as soon as possible with the landowner. The council is committed to ensuring the safety of all road users, and we do take this matter seriously. We will work diligently to implement appropriate measures to help to try address the reoccurring accidents at this junction and aim to prevent further incidents.
Thank you. Emma, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, I do. And thank you for your commitment to look at the issue further and the chevrons. If I may ask, if they are found not to be successful, and obviously there's a concern from the residents, not just for road users, but also for pedestrians, particularly school children, and also residents from the development and others that walk along past it. Can I have your commitment that you'd be prepared to meet with the residents and I to discuss further options along with the technical officers from your highways team?
Yes, I certainly will do. Thank you.
And the final public question is from Tony Johnson. Tony, please, will you put your question?
I'd like to ask the question standing in my name, please.
Thank you very much for your question, Tony. Very good to see you again. I'm pleased to report the project is underway to deliver a fundamental review of the Constitution. This Constitution, of course, has been in place for a very long time. There have been various amendments and changes, but the fundamental structure has been there since we became a unitary authority. And this is therefore, as you can imagine, a very significant and complex task. The technical work of drafting and reviewing the Constitution is going to be performed by the Council's Constitutional Review Working Group and the Council's corporate leadership team, with advice and oversight from external experts to ensure our new constitution reflects the latest best practice. I expect Council to receive the results of the review before the end of the municipal year. The Council exists to serve residents, and the need to put them at the heart of how the Council operates is fundamental to this review. We welcome views from the public and from our partners, and we will be consulting in the autumn to ensure their views and suggestions are considered as part of the review.
Thank you, Tony. I'm sure you have a supplementary.
Thank you for providing a response, and I look forward to the consultation. As far as changes to the Constitution are concerned, we know that they're all complicated and sometimes quite sensitive. And in May this year, a number of substantive changes to the Constitution were made at the same time as the usual reshuffle due to the changes in responsibility. One of which, removal of the provision for executive members to examine contracts and procurements that was not brought to this council. Will the new Constitution contain a provision, as the current one does, to ensure that all substantive changes are brought before this council, even if it's only a matter of courtesy, please?
I will need to check, Tony, that you're accurate in your claims about these changes. My understanding is rather different from yours. I don't want to, off the top of my head, contradict you, I need to look into this and I will give you a written response.
Thank you. That concludes the public questions. Item 20 on our agenda, members, is petitions. Does anyone wish to submit a petition? No? Thank you. Item 21. I understand Councillor Rachel Burgess is proposing this report. Is that correct? Thank you, Rachel. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Jordan. Thank you. Rachel, would you like to speak? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm
If
pleased
you
to
want
propose.
to wait for a moment while our visitors leave the chamber.
I'm pleased to propose this item this evening. The Audit Committee supports the Council's commitment to the highest standards of corporate governance. Bearing in mind several high-profile governance failings in the sector, it's more important than ever to demonstrate that the Council takes good governance seriously. At our Audit Committee meeting in June, we scrutinised this report along with the annual governance statement to ensure that it was a fair representation of the extent to which we achieve high standards of governance. To also highlight the improvements made, but also the areas where we could improve further, and to ensure there's a clear action plan in place. As an Audit Committee, we'll continue to monitor this action plan as part of our role in seeking assurance on governance and control at the Council. Therefore, I would like to recommend this statement to Council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Jordan, would you like to speak on the report? You also have 3 minutes. Or
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
reserve your
I
right.
have no comment.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to speak against the report? Okay, we can now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report on page 31, please raise your hands. That looks pretty unanimous. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The recommendations are carried. Item 22 is Twyford local plan, neighbourhood plan. Lindsay, I understand you're going to propose this.
Yes, Mayor, I am. I am delighted to be able to recommend.
Oh, hang on a minute, Lindsay. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. And now back to you, Lindsay.
I am delighted to be able to recommend that the Council formally adopts the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan following its successful referendum result earlier this month. There was a 29% turnout of Twyford residents, of which over 88% approved the neighbourhood plan in question. This clearly shows that a significant proportion of the Twyford residents are happy to endorse this plan. I would like to thank Twyford Parish Council and in particular the team that worked on developing this plan over 5 years. A considerable amount of work, consultation and research was carried out to support this plan. I would also like to say that there was a lot of information that was compiled into the 90-odd page document, and I was pleased that local residents were asking many questions during the referendum, showing how interested they were in the topic. I therefore propose the Council adopts the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan as recommended under agenda item 22 of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Does any member wish to speak against the report? Councillor Margetts.
Madam Mayor, I'm not.
Sorry, wait a minute.
Oh,
seconder to speak.
Stephen, do you want to reserve your right or speak now?
I think I will reserve my right. I'm quite intrigued to know what Charles is going to say against the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan.
Thank you, Councillor Margetts.
Madam Mayor, I'm not necessarily against the plan. I wanted to ask if I could ask the lead member to make a brief comment. I've not 100% decided on which way to vote, as are a couple of members of my group. And I wondered if you'd permit a brief question, basically, for the lead member.
Thank you. I'm happy for you to answer a question. Okay.
My question was simply this. I note the strong support for the Twyford Neighbourhood Development Plan. And I know, obviously, we've had this experience in Finch Hampstead recently. I note the lead member's comments also about moving forward with the local plan for Woking, which is welcome. But we have 5-year land supply at 2.7 at the moment. And I wanted to ask him for his comments on, we're doing a local plan as the borough, which hopefully will align perfectly with the Twyford one. And also, given if there is a change of government next year, which the opinion polls predict, what his view is on how changes to the Greenbelt policy, which the Labour leader is hinting at, will affect this neighbourhood plan.
I very much support the Greenbelt, so that's my answer to the comment on the issue of what the possible future Prime Minister has. I think they have some issues, but that's for them. Regarding the neighbourhood plan, the neighbourhood plans link with the local plan. They don't have to fully align, but they should be there, and the local plan should take account of what's within whatever neighbourhood plan has been produced. And I am aware, with your question hinted in at Finch Hampstead, I know there has been some issues, and I also had a number of concerns when I actually was involved with the IMD to go to the next stage. So it isn't 100%, but it's there as a means for local people to have greater saying on what may well happen, but it doesn't preclude local plan necessarily dealing with the wider things. But it does provide a lot of important defence, I think is the best way I would describe it.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to the vote. Oh, sorry, Stephen.
I have reserved my right, and I'd now like to exercise it. I must speak.
Does anyone want to speak against?
I thought Charles had spoken against. He said members of his group were reserving their right to whether to vote against or for.
Madam Mayor, I was quite clear that basically I was not 100% decided on which way to vote. I did not say I was going to vote against it.
Okay. I have to say that strikes me as an abuse of this process. The opportunity is to vote against or support, and you've chosen to actually make a statement on planning policy issues rather than actually contribute to a discussion on the Twyford neighbourhood plan, which is the agenda item before us. I'm afraid I find that quite unacceptable.
Madam Mayor, may I respond to that?
Can you sit down, please? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'm a little unsure as to how we can say that we will immediately move to a vote with nobody speaking against if we've already had the equivalent of more than one speech in the debate, and therefore we ought to allow the debate to continue. Charles has made a contribution to the debate. That closes off the idea that nobody's going to speak. Somebody has already spoken, and therefore I think it would be not correct not to allow Stephen to speak with Charles having used an opportunity. This isn't actually covered properly in the Constitution, so you will have to make a mayoral judgment. Sorry, lucky old you.
Yes, according to my left-hand ear, I've made a latitude and allowed you to speak, so we'll now allow Stephen to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will not abuse that privilege. I will simply say that the Twyford neighbourhood plan, like all neighbourhood plans, is part of the architecture of the planning system. It's like all neighbourhood plans, sits at the bottom of the planning hierarchy, but it is a very important document. It contains the aspirations and hopes of the local community. It is designed to give a a very clear steer as to what local communities want, and that has to be taken fully into account in the planning process. So the next stage, the local plan, will take all of this into account. This will carry weight when it comes to planning applications in the parish of Twyford. And of course, you referred also to national planning policy, which unfortunately trumps everything else, as we know. But just one small point in response to a comment of Charles's earlier on. I think he believes the green belt is in Twyford. It's actually in Ruscombe and Hurst, and those are the areas that are most at risk in any changes to green belt policy.
Thank you. We now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report on page 55, please raise your hands. Thank you. Are there any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The recommendation is carried. Item 23 on the agenda. Stephen, I understand you're going to propose this.
Yes, I'm going to propose that we adopt the recommendation in the agenda on the outcome of the Code of Conduct complaint.
Who's going to second it? Thank you. All those in favour of noting the decision as set out in the agenda front sheets, please vote now. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The decision is noted. Item 24 on the agenda, Wokingham Borough Wellbeing Board Annual Report. I understand Councillor David Hare is proposing that report. Is that right, David?
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Prue. David, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say this is a very positive report, and it shows what we have done, the results, and some places where we haven't perhaps got as far as we hoped to, but hopefully we can then go on from there. I don't know if people have looked at the report and seen what it contains, but I want to go into just briefly touch on our strategy and actions and the priorities that we're looking at for this report. And these are based broadly on the Berkshire West Health and Wellbeing Board's actions, but we've added one at the end, which I want to talk about too. We want to reduce the differences in health between different groups of people, and that's very important. The rich stay more healthy than the poorer, things like that, which is very important that we make that an equal situation. We want to support individuals at high risk of bad health outcomes to live as healthy lives as possible. We want to help children and families in early years, and I'm sure that's something that we all understand and agree. And good mental health and well-being for all children and young people. And it's something the condition with the most people in adulthood is mental health. That more people with mental health problems than any other condition are about. And so we want to try and stop mental health becoming an issue in younger people. We want to improve their well-being as much as we can. And then the next one is about having good mental health and well-being for all adults, being as positive as possible and looking at ways to up health and well-being, such as making sure that there's open spaces that people can go into, making sure that people have good conditions to live in. But the one that we've added as Wokingham is creating physically active communities. We felt that good physical health improves mental health and health inequalities. So we want to try and increase people's good physical health so that they can, together with everything else, live healthy lives in this area. I recommend this wellbeing report and would like us all to vote for it.
Thank you. Yeah. Morag, would you like to speak now or reserve your right? Oh.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I might reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you, Prue. We're just having a little discussion about procedure. Does anyone want to speak against the report? Yep. Then we can go to the vote. Please, will you show if you are against the report? For the report first. Thank you. This is only a practice. Thank you. Anyone against it? Any abstentions? Thank you. The report is carried. We move on to members' question times. Councillor Margetts is to ask a question of the Executive Member for Planning and Local Plan. Councillor Margetts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In Liberal Democrat local election literature, Councillor Pittock stated that Sainsbury's will run the supermarket and negotiations for the pub are underway in the new Arborfield Green Village Centre. In a recent social media post, Councillor Pittock also stated that a legal agreement is in place with Sainsbury's and a lease will follow, and discussions are being held with a publican. The residents of Finchampstead South are delighted to hear this and have waited so long for this progress. Can you advise me of the latest updates?
Thank you for your question. I can confirm that officers are in discussions about the supermarket and pub site with Crest and Sainsbury's. These discussions are ongoing and expect to see an application for the supermarket to be submitted in either late summer or early autumn, with construction likely to commence in 2024. The council is not party to the land discussions between Crest and Sainsbury's, but we are informed that negotiations are at an advanced stage. Discussions between Crest and a pub owner are also underway.
Thank you. I think your answer confirms to me that there is, and I have spoken to Crest myself, there is no legal agreement in place with Sainsbury's yet. It's still undergoing. So how can residents from Arborfield Green and the village area moving forward trust the council when misleading information is given in election material?
I think a recommendation on whether that's a valid question.
Madam Mayor, I've been named, so can I speak, please?
Yes, you may.
Yes, thank you. Actually, the question I'm not sure is a legitimate one.
Point of order, please. My question was to the lead member for planning, Councillor Ferris, not to Councillor Pittock.
But I have been
clarify
named.
that he's allowed to answer the question, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So Ian can speak.
Under the appointed personal explanation.
Yes. Ian, you can speak under a point of personal explanation.
Thank you.
Point of order.
I think we're about to make the same point. A point of personal explanation, according to the standing orders, relates to something, a clarification of a speech you made earlier in the meeting. So therefore, that's not a correct interpretation in my view.
Madam Mayor,
Excuse me for just a moment, Lindsay.
I would like to make a request under Standing Order 4.2.12.k. I should like to ask for an adjournment so that I can speak to Councillor Ian Pittock.
Yeah, could you just wait for a moment, Lindsay?
I'm trying. Trying to help him out.
So we just need to deal with Lindsay now.
This request the adjournment to
Okay. Okay.
So first of all, we get Rebecca to rephrase her question.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we go to Lisa's comment.
The other way around. So we ask Lindsay for a seconder and then adjournment.
Okay, fine.
Lindsay, do you have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you. And could you repeat what you said beforehand?
Yes. I would like to ask for an adjournment of, say, 5 minutes to under Standing Orders 4.2.12k, so that I can have a discussion with Councillor Ian Pittock to discuss the issue.
Is that okay? Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So all in favour?
Okay. Can I see a show of hands, please, for a vote in favour of the adjournment? That's definitely a majority.
Against?
Anyone against?
Any abstain?
Any abstentions?
Okay, carried.
That's carried. We'll have a short adjournment. 10 minutes. Yeah. Thank you, members. Please be seated. Thank you. After a discussion here with the advisors, it is not appropriate that a point of personal explanation is taken by Councillor Pittock. And the other action is to ask Councillor Rebecca Margetts if she would like to reword the questions that she used in her speech earlier on.
What do you want me to reword, Madam Mayor?
Talking about political literature, those bits.
Well, my question is, Madam Mayor, if I can
your supplementary question.
Yeah, my supplementary question was, how can residents trust the council when there's been misleading information in election literature? That's my question.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm quite happy to answer that one. First of all, your question indicates Councillor Pittock. Ian Pittock was not councillor at the time. Secondly, it is not the responsibility of the council for electoral material. So I don't think this is a pertinent question.
Okay, let's move on to question 25.2.
Point of order, please, Madam Mayor. So under 4.2.12, I've lost it now. M, to suspend a particular rule of procedure, I would like us to suspend 4.2.10.8, length of the time allocated to questions. In that this section only has 30 minutes. I think we should go to all member questions have been heard.
Is there a seconder? Yes, several seconders. Thank you. And yes, we will take the questions. We go to the vote for that. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Charles Margetts, please, your question.
Thank you. My question to Councillor Fishwick. Can you tell me if the tender for the redevelopment of California Crossroads has been awarded by Wokingham Borough Council to a contractor and when the work is expected to start and finish?
Thank you, Charles, for your question. As indicated in the mail to you on dated the 7th of June, the contract has been awarded to BQS Management and an initial meeting with the council took place on the 13th of June. WBC and BQS will be undertaking a site visit to review the constraints, and then the contractor will update their programme for us to share with businesses, members and residents. We hope to start construction in the summer of 2024, but will confirm the programme when it's been fully prepared by the contractor.
Thank you.
Thank you. My supplementary was this. I met yesterday with the garage, shops, vet, dentist, restaurants at the Crossroads. They're disappointed there's been no engagement with them for the last 4 years and that their petition has not been heard to stop the scheme. But looking towards the future, I note your comments and what you've just said. Can you give me a firm date, basically, when officers will engage with these businesses, take their concerns on board and try and reassure them that now this scheme is going ahead, they will be listened to, engaged with, and concerns will be dealt with? Because that's what they would like to know.
I will come back to you with a firm date once I've spoken to officers, because they are currently working with a contractor on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 25.3, Councillor Pauline Hellyer-Simons, please would you ask your question of the Executive Member for Planning and the Local Plan?
My residents would like you to make a commitment not to allow 835 additional houses in the northeast corner of Wokingham Without, in the green gap between Wokingham and Bracknell. Will you make this commitment not to put this site in the new local plan?
Pauline, for your question. The land I believe you are referring to is situated immediately south of the planned houses within the South Wokingham District strategic development location. The land you refer to has been promoted by developers for consideration through the local plan process. You may recall that the last administration approved a draft planning strategy for consultation, the revised growth strategy consultation, which took place at the end of 2021. Reviewing this, I note that the growth strategy consultation suggested the land as one of the preferred options to meet the borough's housing need, proposing around 835 houses on it. Through this consultation, everyone has had an opportunity to comment on this option. Looking forward, I'm working with officers to look carefully at all the options for how we can best plan for our housing and development needs in ways that ensure that our new local plan will pass as sound public consultation. A public examination. The programme for taking forward the local plan will be discussed at executive next week. Clearly, I cannot predetermine the local plan process, with it being essential that all councillors keep an open mind until the matter ready for discussion. I can, however, assure you that we will carefully consider all the views that have been expressed by residents alongside those of stakeholders and importantly, the technical evidence that must guide us to the best and most sustainable locations for new development to be located.
Thank you. Pauline.
I have a supplementary, thank you. I'm absolutely aware that it was in the draft local plan, but as you'll be aware, the draft is to gauge people's reaction to what's in it. And the reaction of my local residents against this site was huge, 100%, I would say. I don't know of a single person who was in favour of it. And my question is, will you come and view this site with me to see its value as a green gap between Wokingham, Crowthorne and Bracknell, and to see its value as an environmentally valuable open space, as well as its potential highway dangers if there is a development there? Will you come and see it with me, please?
Yes, well, give me some dates and I'll come. I'll ask some officers or an officer to come with me and we can have a look at the site in question.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, 25.4, is David Davis asking the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure.
Thank you. Or perhaps it might be of interest to the climate emergency. I was delighted this year the council chose to promote biodiversity through Plant Life's No Mow May initiative, encouraging residents to let their lawns grow for a critical month in the year, helping local wildlife, particularly our pollinators. I was therefore surprised and disappointed that WBC chose to start cutting grass in my ward in the middle of May, and as a result, I'm aware of some residents that have gone ahead and cut their own grass in frustration at this do-as-I-say approach. Can the executive member confirm why this has happened and commit that it will not happen in future years?
Thank you for your question. The borough's grass continues to be cut throughout May, as it would be impractical for the contractor to stop the operation for a month. The grass cutting cycle for most of our verges and informal open spaces can typically be longer than a month, especially when allowing for weather and ground conditions. And that then allows smaller plants such as daisies, birdsfoot trefoil to flower, and then provide food source for bees, butterflies and other invertebrates. In our high use open spaces and in sight lines, there is a requirement to cut the grass more frequently. However, we often have designated areas of long grass that are cut annually, and that helps to provide food and shelter for wildlife.
You have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Well, since the end of No Mow May, we've had another problem around the borough with seemingly No Mow June and No Mow July as well. Residents are worried for their children and animals over ticks and overgrowth, reducing visibility at junctions, despite the comments that have just been made. This administration is mowing when it shouldn't and not when it should. What is being done to ensure this shambles doesn't happen and continue again next year?
I disagree with the statement that it's mowing when it shouldn't and not mowing when it should. The problems this year were almost exclusively due to the weather particularly March being the wettest March for 102 years since records began. April being wetter than usual, machinery was sinking into the ground. It couldn't be cut in a lot of places. And so we got well behind, and by the time the weather changed and grass shot up, then it became harder to cut and the cuts took longer. And it's been an awful job to catch up. We can't guarantee that that won't happen next year because we don't know what the weather will be like next year.
Thank you. Question 25.5, Councillor Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. Could the Executive Member explain how someone would park in a town centre car park in the evening if they wanted to leave their car overnight until 8 AM the next morning without incurring a fine?
Thank you, Phil, for your question. The ticket machines have a facility to prepay for your parking, either by card or cash. After you have entered your vehicle registration number, you'll be asked to choose a payment option. If you are using a card, then the machine, you can increase the parking period by using the plus symbol. As you increase the time period, the expiry time and date is displayed on the screen and also shows the amount that you'll be charged to your card. For cash payments at the machine, it's slightly different. You will need to insert the amount needed to cover the additional time period. For example, should you arrive at 7 PM and wish to stay till 8 AM the next day, you will need to insert £3.50 for a car park in Wokingham. The machines, when calculating the amount, will take into account the evening charge of £1 and the free overnight period, which extends to the stay until 6 AM. Anyone doing this before 10 PM will not need to obtain a free VEN ticket for the overnight stay, but you will need to obtain a ticket if you park after 10 PM. In addition, residents are able to purchase an overnight residence permit, which enables them to park from 6 PM until 8 AM. For an annual permit, this would cost £161, which is equivalent to 44p per evening stroke overnight period.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. May I say thank you to the member for his answer. It reminds me of a Monty Python sketch about moving your coat to the lower peg before lunch after you've moved your shoes into a different cupboard. I have pictures of bleary-eyed travellers staying in the Premier Inn or wherever, making their way to the car park in order to pay the ticket for the morning. And that's what drove this question. However, what was further driven this question, and my supplementary, if you would excuse me, is the confusion about for the very members in this chamber about how they would deal with parking in the car park in order to attend this meeting, which include many conversations backwards and forwards with officers in the council, as you will know, because I think some of our Lib Dem friends were involved in them. So my question is, can you please consider and ask your office to consider making the rules simpler and making the signage clearer and written in plain English so people know what is expected of them, so they do not get a fine for parking incorrectly?
The signs on site are in plain English. It's £1 for the evening charge in Wokingham, and that allows you to park from 6 PM through to 10 PM. And if you want to extend your stay, it allows you, when you put your registration period in, you press the button and you'll see the plus sign come up for it, and it says additional time. All that information is there.
Thank you. Next question, 25-6, Councillor Gary Cowan, who is online. Gary, please would you ask your question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the question standing in my name. Thank you.
I'm not entirely sure which bit of Gary that is. Gary, thank you for your question. Our plan of action for development of SEND facilities in the coming years includes the opening of Oak Tree Special School, ultimately providing a total of 150 places, of which 75 will be for Wokingham children, which will open in September 2023. Then the expansion of Addington Special School in autumn 2023, with 40 additional places for younger pupils in the Farley Hill site as a satellite to the main school. 2 new special schools with funding already secured from the DFE, providing at least 200 new places by 2026-27. One is for pupils with social, emotional and mental health difficulties, and the other for pupils with cognitive difficulties. Wokingham recently successfully bid for an additional 6.3 million high needs capital funding from the DFE, which will provide the following: reconfiguring our existing services in mainstream schools to make resource bases more effective, and introduce a new higher tier of support through SEND units, providing around an additional 100 places by 2026, and new local services for post-16s with SEND, with a focus on routes into employment, and investing in a new SEND support service and local specialist outreach services to build confidence and skills in mainstream settings so that more children can go to their local school.
Gary, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you very much for the answer, Prue, and thank you for holding a meeting with the various ward members who had an interest in the 2 SEND schools planned for Rupsness Farm. Am I there somewhere? I would like to say that some Woking children travel a long way to Ascot and Newbury, and I have no doubt these extra schools will make life for the parents and the children much better. It's important to recognise that no children must be left behind. So I welcome these schools, and I expect our residents will also. Can I ask that we have better PR and send schools using simple English to explain to our residents the need for having different schools to meet the children's needs? In the consultation ending tomorrow, can I ask that the recognise that in SEND provision, one side doesn't fit all, and especially for the over 16s. But again, thank you very much for your explanation so far. It's very welcome and very positive.
Thank you, Gary. I think the consultation you're referring to is the home to school transport consultation. There is no doubt at all that many of our children with special educational needs are needing to travel a long way, and having schools in the borough will help them with shorter journeys, but also help our home to school transport bill, which has unfortunately risen by about 90% in the last 5 years. So it's gone from 3 million to 5.8, and it's ever expanding. And we can't live with that sort of increase. So we are going to have to make changes to our home to school transport policy and consider how we can make the money stretch as far as possible. But certainly the new provision will help. It will help children in all those ways. And I'm very pleased that we're able to do it.
Thank you, Prue. 25-7, Councillor Baker, please will you ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for the Executive Member for Active Travel and Transport, I believe. I've got a copy of the original agreement between WBC, Taylor Wimpey and Woodley Properties signed on the 2nd of May 2012. The site involved was Sanford Farm, and it currently has around about 700 houses on it. As is normal for a large development such as this, Section 7 includes developer contributions to bus service enhancements, which is £629,000, travel plan purpose £122,000, and infrastructure or other transport improvements, £1.3 million, grand total of over 2 million, which should have been spent in Woodley, mitigating against the impact of these 700 houses. It also includes a clause which says that after 10 years, any unused money can be used anywhere at WBC's discretion. Well, the 10 years are now up. So I would like to know how this large sum of money, this 2 million, has been spent. So can you please provide a full breakdown of all the projects that this money was spent on? Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for your question. You are correct that there are separate clauses in relation to the unspent funds for the bus service enhancements and the travel plan, although not quite as you described. There is an associated deed variation linked under planning reference 152651 that relates to an additional sum for public transport. The 10-year deadline is from the receipt of the date of funds received and not the date of the agreement. As many of these were paid in several instalments, the 10-year expiry date varies for each instalment. The earliest date for one being September 2024, and this money has already been spent. The next to expire is in 2026, and the team have this in hand to ensure that the target date is met. There is a table. I won't go through the whole table, I'll summarise it, but highlighted within the table below is an overview of the funds spent and the date together with the remaining allocation. So we have schemes such as Beda Way, phases 1, 2 and 3, Hurricane Way, School Crossing, My Journey, Woodley, public transport number 19 service, transport corridor improvements, Shepherd's Hill to Thames Valley Park, Park and Ride, Woking and Borough Council cycle network, Kingfisher Drive. The total of those particular projects, what's been spent is 822,000, and there is 1.550 million left still to be spent. This should help demonstrate that the officers have carried out their duties and enacted the associated agreements in respect of section 106. The funds total are greater than 2 million as they have index linked inflation to the funds in their legal agreements. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Fishwick. Councillor Baker, you have a supplement.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing that table. I recall major comments by the administration about the bus services generally in Wokingham, but specifically in Woodley, saying there was no money to fund that, so therefore they would have to restrict the service, withdraw the service. It's all the fault of the previous administration. But clearly, as you've just demonstrated, a large sum was actually available to fund the 19 service, which is a valuable service.
Can you put your question?
So can I ask you for the future, because Woodley councillors have not had any information about this expenditure that you've just gone through, for the future, because you said it's quite a large sum, over £1 million, can I get your commitment that you will engage, or officers will engage with councillors of Woodley to understand how that is being spent before the fact, not after the fact? Thank you.
Yes, I can certainly do that for you. Thank you.
Question 25.8, Councillor Andrew Gray. Andrew.
Thank you. Residents in my ward feel unsafe using the junction between B3270 and Whitley Wood Lane due to the number of accidents and near misses over the last year. What is the council doing to make this junction safer?
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. I understand that residents in your ward have expressed concerns about the safety of the junction between the B3270 and Whitley Wood Lane. The council uses a database of personal injury accidents and assesses the safety of roads in the borough. This data is provided by the police following any road traffic collision that resulted in injury to anybody involved. The council do not have records of any road traffic collisions that have resulted in just damage-only accidents. Upon reviewing the available personal injury accident data, it was found that this particular junction was not among the top 50 sites with the highest number of personal injury accidents in the borough. The frequency of personal injury accident collisions has reduced since the introduction of local road safety scheme in 2014, and the annual average is 1 collision per year. Given the volume of traffic using it at peak times, it's classed as a low risk location. The junction would therefore not normally be identified for further investigation or treatment. However, the council has taken steps to review and consider potential safety issues reported at the junction. Recently, the council has replaced bollards, refreshed road markings, removed some redundant signs, and realigned others to face oncoming drivers. Some trees do require trimming. However, these come within the jurisdiction of Reading Borough Council, and so we do require their assistance, and a request has been made to the Borough of Reading to carry out those works. Furthermore, it was determined that certain sections of fencing along the B3270 were the responsibility of National Highways.
Councillor Fishwick, can you finish now, please? You're
Yep.
out of time.
And that's been reported to them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gray, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thank you for that response. I was a bit surprised that it doesn't fall under one of the top ones with in terms of accidents. I think it was December last year, I think on the 17th, whilst there may have only been one, it was a very serious one which involved someone being airlifted to hospital for it. Is there no consideration in the sort of analysis of that which considers the severity of accidents rather than just the frequency?
Unfortunately, personal injury accidents occur all over the borough, and therefore what we have to do is look at the worst locations where there are accidents occurring which cause personal injury, and the top 50 are the priority ones to be looked at. And through the integrated transport funding, we then review those sites, and these are the ones which we carry out improvements to try and mitigate personal injury accidents.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Peter Harper, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question is to the Executive Member for Climate Emergency. With the 2 solar farms in Barkham unlikely to go ahead due to the lack of capacity in the local electricity transmission network, what contingency plan is there to save the 14,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide that form a critical part of the net zero strategy?
Thank you, Peter. Firstly, can I make clear that the plan is for 1 solar farm at Barkham, not 2, and that the council has a climate emergency action plan that measures our progress towards carbon neutrality, not net zero. It's a big difference. The design and survey work for the solar farm project has been put on hold, not abandoned, pending the resolution of the connection issue, which is a countrywide issue not exclusive to us. There is strong evidence that the government and the industry are aligned for and working towards significant reform of the UK grid connection process in the very near future, and we have been and continue to be proactive in adding our voice to what that reform should look like. Following the creation of the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, the government's manifesto, Powering Up Britain, was published, which sets out a goal to quintuple solar power and fully decarbonise the power system by 2035. The Energy Networks Association published a 3-step action plan to speed up the UK grid connection process, and National Grid have published a 5-point plan to speed up the current connections queue. A joint action plan between Ofgem and the government is due this summer on connections reform. Ofgem identified that through the plans, it is expected that the majority of existing projects will see significant improvements in connection dates, especially those that are shovel-ready, such as Barkham Solar Farm. The signs are therefore that significant reform to the connection process is imminent. Reform that is anticipated will impact significantly and positively upon the timely delivery of the Barkham Solar Farm project. As you should be aware, the Climate Emergency Action Plan, even with all the measures in there, will not reach carbon neutrality by 2030. Should we have any other projects that could save equivalent levels of carbon emissions, we would rather they were in the plan and not being held in reserve. It's not a case of either or. That being said, the lack of statutory powers and resource for local authorities to tackle the climate emergency does limit our capacity, and I would implore you to help lobby government to provide local government with these much needed powers and the resources that go with it.
Peter, do you have a supplementary?
I do.
Thank you.
I hopefully share your enthusiasm for the connection coming in earlier than we've been told, but it's still not going to be ready for summer 24 when it was originally going to be scheduled to be providing power and getting revenue into the council. So what impact do you think is the anticipated delay going to have on the cost of producing or installing a solar farm with high inflation at the moment, high increases in building costs? It's likely to be a lot more expensive than the £26.8 million currently in the budget.
Firstly, it was always going to be connected in, I think it's August 26, certainly around the late summer, autumn time for 2026 was the connection date, which we had agreed in April 2022 with the district network operator. In terms of the funding for this, we've obviously contracted with Bouygues. We have an agreement in our contract of the ability to have a 6-month break with no increased costs during that time. We are using that break currently. Bouygues have been absolutely brilliant, I'd like to say, in how they've worked with us and been very understanding. We're obviously not their only customer in this circumstance. We're not at that stage yet. We're at the end of that 6-month period. It's highly likely that we'll have a new connection date before that happens, but should that not be the case, we'll have those discussions. We are discussing this at the Barkham Solar Farm Project Board, which your colleague Rebecca Margetts is on as well. And we've had this discussion as well with officers, and she can verify what I've just said.
Thank you. 2510, Councillor Croy, please.
Thank you. First of all, Ian, you'll excuse the dates. These timings were correct when I put the question in. So last week there was a council press release announcing that fewer bins will be emptied at some indeterminate point in the future. This week or the following week, we see that bins are being covered with black plastic bags. When was the executive member planning on informing residents and members about the timings of which bins will be affected by the decision to not empty them?
Councillor Shenton.
Yes, thank you, Andy. The council is currently projecting significant financial pressures from the current and future financial years, and these must be addressed if we are to maintain the council's statutory obligations, particularly for those most in need. This council's MTFP highlighted savings of some £60,000 per annum in relation to the naturalisation of some areas within the borough, but given the pressure of inflation, it was clear that further service reductions were needed in relation to grass cutting, but also public bin collections and street cleaning. So the council has worked hard to find a way forward with its contractors and began to implement the budget and service changes, which included the taping over of some litter bins. But given the impact of these changes, it was recognised the council began this work without the appropriate approvals and necessary supportive work being in place. Investigations and efforts by the council have begun to remedy or mitigate the changes in service, while due decision-making process are followed. I refer to next week's executive committee, the report, the Q1 revenue report, which sets out the next actions and the timetable, including the process to consult and to have appropriate scrutiny prior to the matter being considered by the executive at its meeting in October.
Thank you. Councillor Croy, your supplementary.
Yep, thank you, Ian. I listened very carefully. I don't think you answered my question. My question was when would members going to be informed? So given there's a consultation coming up, how can my residents or any residents in the borough be expected to respond to that consultation if we do not know which bins are going to be binned?
I think the process got out of kilter. That's why there was incorrect timing of certain steps. And there will be a consultation, there will be information available that will allow the consultation to actually look at some of the detail that we are considering.
Thank you. Question 2511, Councillor Blumenthal, please. Laura.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Residents have been asking me about the £250,000 hardship fund mentioned in Lib Dem leaflets. Please, can you share how residents in crisis can apply for payments from this hardship fund?
Thank you for your question, Laura. I was a little bit surprised to get it because you were a member of the cross-party working group which looked at how this £250,000 should be spent. You also spoke against spending this money on residents in need in a previous council meeting. However, the more publicity that we can get for our residents on how they can get help in a crisis, the better, and I'm very happy to repeat our message here tonight. Woking Borough Council and our Hardship Alliance partners have a number of well-established routes to provide grants and financial assistance directly to residents in need. These include our Local Welfare Provision Fund, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme, and the Household Support Fund. Details of how residents can access this help is on the Cost of Living Help page on the WBC website. It is also publicised in our paper publications, such as the Cost of Living Crisis leaflet, which was delivered to every home in the borough. The £250,000 hardship fund, which I think you're referencing here, is different. This money is an additional fund which the Liberal Democrat administration, working closely with the officers, has allocated to fund a number of key projects. These projects will make a long-term difference to the lives of our residents, tackling and preventing the root causes of hardship. They will deliver for our residents for years to come. These projects address a number of key areas which were selected after extensive cross-party consultation with councillors including yourself and our voluntary and community sector partners. We will be publicising the projects selected in the coming weeks, but I'm happy to share tonight that they will include a community food project to help residents afford nutritious food, a pilot scheme for poverty-proofing the school day, and funding which will help children growing up in low-income families to access school uniforms and essential learning materials and to be able to participate in all aspects of school life. These projects will change the lives of many people in the borough, and I hope that you and the Conservatives will be able to support them.
Thank you. Laura, your supplementary.
Thank you. And thank you for your answer. I understand it to be a project fund as well, which is why residents pushed me on it, because they said that sadly these people are used to going for hardship funds themselves. And they said, well, they understand hardship fund to be a direct discretionary payment to those in hardship. So that's why they have been misled by this wording. So we really do need to start calling it a project fund, because that's what it is. And that's what you explained here. And they can't directly apply for it. But my question is, what consultation has this council done with residents who are in crisis and residents who can benefit from these projects as to what they want this £250,000 money spent on? And I don't mean consultation with charities who are going to help spend the money, but directly with residents themselves.
Thank you, Laura. The consultation was with us as cross-party councillors, people who understand our residents and our wards the best, and with the voluntary and community sector, the Hardship Alliance and with the Hardship Alliance Action Group, who provide us with a really good way of effectively contacting residents, understanding grassroots concerns so that we can understand what residents in the borough would like the money to be spent on. Thank you.
So is that a no consultation with residents?
Thank you, Laura. 2512, Councillor Mike Smith, please.
Thank you. This question is to the Executive Member for Housing. The Building Safety Act 2022, that is a direct result of the Grenfell disaster, places a large number of responsibilities onto the building owner, which cannot be offset through contract. How is Wokingham Borough Council planning to comply with the newly defined responsibilities related to buildings that WBC own? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for your question, Mike. Just give me the opportunity to try and clarify this position and the obligations we have under the Building Safety Act 2022. That Act introduces reforms and safeguards for building occupiers, primarily aimed at buildings over 18 metres tall or 7 stories or more. It defines higher risk buildings as a building in England that is at least 18 metres in height or has at least 7 stories. And for the purpose of the part of the new regime that relates to occupied buildings, contains at least 2 residential units. The other provisions will apply only to buildings over 18 metres tall or 7 stories or more, except for some protection from cladding costs, which will apply to leaseholders in buildings 11 metres tall or 5 stories or more. Wokingham Borough Council does not own or manage any residential buildings taller than these height thresholds. We still need to be mindful of the need to comply with current legislation, regulations and good practice. We also need to keep up with the requirements of the Building Safety Regulator, the National Regulator of Construction Products and the New Homes Ombudsman as they take on their new responsibilities and issue guidance. The legislation is flexible, so more buildings can be brought into scope over time. Responsibilities for building safety sits across a number of council departments, including property, corporate health and safety, housing, building control, and the local planning authority, and are coordinated through the corporate landlord model. Specific to housing, the Housing Service are currently commissioning an external expert audit of our current compliance with housing safety standards, which is due to be completed in the near future.
Stephen, you're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, do you have a supplementary?
In light of that very comprehensive answer, no.
Thank you very much. The next question, number 13 on our agenda, is Councillor Abdul Loys. Abdul, please will you ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How has the council assessed which bin it will be removed and which need less emptying in parks and walking routes? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Abdul. The main part of the question, basically, the answer is the same as I gave to Councillor Croy, question 10. But I would also say that the criteria by which bins were selected and will be reselected, as it were, will be reassessed, and councillors will have an opportunity to see that.
Thank you. Abdul, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Madam Mayor. With the executive meeting on bins removing and frequency of emptying the bins not until October, why are bins still covered in black bin lines?
Why have they been covered? Yeah. Why are they still? The process is ongoing to remedy that and to mitigate what has happened.
Thank you. The next question, 2514, which isn't in your agenda, is from Councillor Alison Swaddle. Alison, thank you.
Thank you. Residents in my ward are very concerned that litter bins have already been removed from use in areas where they're well used and thus much needed. Can you tell me what consultation took place? I think we've already had that answer. And when the list of these bins will be published. Do you think that a press release is a satisfactory mode of information for the removal of an important service, since the loss has an immediate impact on the neighbourhood? Woodley is very fortunate to have a fantastic network of voluntary litter pickers, but the council shouldn't be imposing additional work with the expectation our volunteers will keep Woodley tidy.
Again, thank you, Alison. The core answer is the same as I gave to Councillor Croy. The process got out of kilter. It was out of step, and the consultation will take place, and necessary steps will follow due process.
Thank you, Alison. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. I was intrigued to hear your answer to Councillor Loys, but it's a slow process to remove the black bins. When I witnessed our van of workmen emptying bins on Spitfire Way, but leaving black bags covering other bins. So please, could we endeavour to have the black bags removed as soon as possible by whenever one of our team is in that area?
Yes, we are working to do that.
Thank you. That's the end of members' question times. We're now going to take a short adjournment, 10-minute comfort break. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please be seated. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 26, minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. Please will you indicate, thank you Andy, if you want to speak. Oh, Andy's reactions are very quick. Thank you. Keep your hands up for a moment while we take your name. Thank you. Yeah. First one we'll take, thank you, is Laura.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is the Executive Member of Highways. First of all, thank you. You said you'd write to Thames Water about the dangerous flooding on a roundabout in Nightingale Road in my ward, and you did. And Thames Water said that they would look at it. That was March. It's still flooding now in July. So please, could you get back in touch with them to make sure that they have actioned it and they are going to fix it?
Thank you, Laura, for your question. I have already written to Thames Water, chasing them up. They have committed to an order to do the works. We also have to remember, and I remember you said that this problem started in 2016 and nothing happened under the previous Conservative administration. I am taking action to get this sorted. I first knew about this in December through yourself and the Mayor, Beth Rowlands, and action is being taken. And I've written to Thames Water twice already to get an answer. And I chased them up again at the beginning of this week, but they have not come back to me with any response.
Thank you. Caroline.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to Councillor Al Neil, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. I see from the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee meeting of the 12th of June 2023, item 8 on the agenda, that Thames Water attended the meeting and gave a presentation. And they were asked a number of issues that affected us locally. This is something I'm sure our residents will be interested in. Can you please tell me any follow-up actions that have taken place since this meeting? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for the question. Yes, we had a very good session with Richard Aylard, the Sustainability Director of Thames Water, at the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee meeting. The action, basically, we've sent a letter to Richard, which summarises the recommendations that were made during the meeting. The letter was sent, I think, last week or the week before, and the letter is to be attached to the minutes and has been distributed to the members of the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Paul, but it's for the member for Active Travel and Highways. A number of the residents in my ward, in the new housing estates especially, have moved from central and west London out to leafy Wokingham to enjoy the open space and the fresh air, knowing that they could work hybrid and still travel into their work in London, especially because of the opening of the Elizabeth line. Now, I ask you a question by email, which you very kindly responded about the potential use of the Oak Avenue Park and Ride, which you responded that you were up there with thinking about how this could be used. Well, a number of my residents and residents of other members here have raised a question: is there a possibility that we could consider a business case for a small bus type service which might travel from there to from the Oak Avenue car park to Twyford station, to take advantage of that, especially as travelling there by car? In order to get the train, there's no car parking spaces available.
Yes, you're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, for your question. Options are being currently considered and discussions are taking place. I can't say anything more at the moment, but something will be hopefully announced in the near future.
Councillor Jordan Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the executive member for the local plan and planning. It's regarding Grays Farm. Now that we have confirmation that SEND schools will not be built on the site, could you provide an update on the latest developments regarding the planned sports facilities for Grays Farm?
Thank you, Jordan, for your question. Yes, there's some work still going on, but at the moment the proposals are for 3 3G pitches and for 4 grass pitches, football that is, and for a number of paddleboard areas as well. So that is what's going on, and we're working with the England, Sports England, to get that through. So the plan, and there is an overall master plan being put together at the moment for that site. So it is now being fully worked on.
Councillor Graham Howe, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question is to the executive member for highways. It's sort of on behalf of a number of us that border the Bath Road. Now, our understanding is that it is within the power of the local authority to set speed limits. And there's been a number of questions over the years that I've been around about various speed limits. So could he please give some time to us in the north and put it up his priority list, because we know that we in the north are down on the priority list, and consult together with us so that we can address these very serious residents' issues.
Thank you for your question. There is no difference between the north, south, east or west. The whole of the borough is a priority. Regarding speed limits, it depends on which particular section that you're talking about. And if you could email me the details, I'd be most appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Croy.
To look up, thank you, Andrew. I was just looking up the rule I had to quote to extend this part of the meeting. My question is for Paul. Again, Paul. All of the off-road car parking in Woodley Town Centre is in my ward. There has been some, I would think, unfounded fear that the increase in car parking charges will impact footfall. Will the member be able to share with us at some point in the near future data which allows us to make a meaningful comparison about the effects of the car park increases on footfall time data?
Thank you, Andy, for your question. It is early days at the moment since the car parking charges have changed. I am looking to put together a report based on the information from previous years and compare that with current years to see, this current period, and then we can do a comparison, and I can make that available. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahid, please. Shahid Yunus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Executive Member for Environment. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting complaint from my residents in my ward that the grass is not being cut and now it's turned to haze. And now the grass has been cut. And now what's happened is a lot of waste has been left on the road. As a result, the drainage has been, number of drainage has been blocked and it's caused floodings. I'm sure this is not an issue in my ward, probably others as well. But why aren't we asking the contractors that when they leave a lot of waste on the road, why aren't they cleaning it?
The grass cutting contract does not include the collection of the grass cuttings, and this contract has been in use now since 2016. It's an old contract. It's got 10 years to run, so it will be 2026 before it expires. There's not a apart from maybe City of Westminster and one or two other high-profile areas, there's not a local authority in the country that has a grass cutting contract that collects the cuttings. So what we're getting is an unfortunate situation where they got much longer than normal, and they are perhaps falling into the gutter more than they would do if they had been the normal length. If there's any issues about flooding, then please contact us through either through the online facility, or you can email the relevant officers or myself. But if there's any specific issues, we'll deal with them. But it's an issue due to the situation.
Councillor Andrew Mickleborough, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Planning and Local Plan. I'm very disappointed to see that on the 11th of July, a planning application was lodged requesting a change in land use of horticultural land to residential garden. The land in question is part of the important Green Corridor in Hawkden Ward, stretching along Lower Early Way. Previously owned by WBC, it came into private ownership in 2021 via adverse possession, after the owners of a neighbouring property started to maintain the land and grew vegetables on part of that WBC land from spring 2005. May I ask the Executive Member to investigate how many such cases of loss of WBC-owned land there have been in Hawkden Ward and further afield, and to provide a written response to this and measures being undertaken to monitor and prevent similar actions from occurring in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Adverse possession, it does happen from time to time, and it is something that we are concerned about. So yes, I am concerned that such action has occurred, and will ask the appropriate officers to establish whether there have been other instances, and also to put procedures in place to prevent further actions occurring. And usually this happens where the council doesn't do anything with a piece of land and it's left alone for, I think it's 10 years. And this is something that we're losing assets as a result.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Madam Mayor, can I cite standing order 4210, 4212M, and extend the period for member ward questions under whatever number it was. 4210.9. Yes, 4210.9. Thank you, Andy. So that we can ask all the ward questions that people put their hands up to ask.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Can we have a vote on that, please, if you're for that? Keep your hands up for a moment. Yeah, any against? Abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Yes, we will. Thank you. Councillor David Davis next, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unusually large number of children this year have not got places in their first choice Edgeborough School in my ward, and they're now being sent many miles away, but have been refused travel support when having put only a single school preference, as is allowed by the policy. Will the executive member confirm why these parents are being refused support when this is clearly not parental choice within the spirit or letter of the current policy to have their children intentionally schooled so far away and incurring crippling costs as a result? And also, with the new consultations considering removing of the SEN fair payer fee post 16-year-olds, when its own assessment shows this is a high negative equalities impact to those with disabilities.
I think that was two questions, Madam Mayor. I will answer the first one, which was comes under the rules. I cannot imagine that this council breaks its own policy when deciding what to do with school transport. If parents, when parents apply to a school, there are 4 choices that they can put on their application form. And if they don't use all those 4 choices and they just pick their nearest school, or they choose some other schools which are not their nearest schools, they will fall foul of the rule that says that they will not be entitled to school transport assistance.
That's wrong.
It's not as clear as it might be in the admissions part of the website, and we are going to try and rectify that to make it much clearer to parents. But while I feel a lot of sympathy for residents in Woking Without, because their nearest school is Edgebarrow, there's a lot of competition for that school. That school is not in our borough, it's an academy, so we can't control the admissions to that. And even if they expanded their school, there's no guarantee that residents from Woking Without will get their children in because of the demand from Bracknell residents. So we're in a bit of a difficult situation, but I'm afraid that the situation is that we correctly apply our policy, and if they don't believe we have applied our policy correctly, there is an appeal mechanism and their appeal will be heard. And I understand there have been some appeals heard from residents in that area, some of which have presented behaviour at that appeal which has really not been acceptable. I understand that parents try to fight for the rights for their children, but some, that has to be within reason, and we expect people to treat our officers and our members with respect. It is difficult, as I said earlier in an answer to Gary. We have to make our home to school transport budget stretch. We cannot afford discretionary payments for schools outside the entitlement under the policy, and that's just how it is. If we had a lot more money, we would not have to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Dubay.
Since the close of Sainsbury's Recycling Centre, which was a mini tip, there are only 2 bottle banks in the area to replace the Winnish mini tip. Right now, we only have a bottle bank in Singlesham and one up in Hurst. Which is wondering, is there any plans to have a multi-area recycling bins for Winnish? Actually for Wokingham, because we have to either drive to Reading or Bracknell to get rid of recycling if it's not on a recycling day.
Unfortunately, Sainsbury's don't choose to engage with RE3. And we understand even that their contractor may not even recycle some of the things that they collect, which frankly, if that's true, would be disgraceful. We have 4 bottle banks within about 1 mile of that Winnish Crossroads. We have Woodward Close. We have the one you mentioned in Sindlesham. There's one at Dinton Pastures, and there's one slightly over 1 mile away in Wharfdale Road. It would not be practical to put one on Sainsbury's doorstep, even if we could find a site.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Harper, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not entirely sure who this question is for. I suspect it's the Executive Member for Business and Economic Development, because it's about broadband. I couldn't find responsibilities under broadband, so anyway, here goes. Last year, we had a presentation from City Fibre on the rollout of fibre broadband across the borough. At the meeting, I was assured that all roads in Finch Hampstead would be covered by the City Fibre. I've heard from residents recently that some roads are being excluded. Can the Executive Member for Business and Economic Development follow up with City Fibre and ensure that all roads in Finch Hampstead have fibre installed?
Thank you very much for your question, Peter. I will certainly do that if you give me the details later on. I'll follow it up.
Thank you. Councillor Rebecca Marget.
Thank you. My question's to Prue Gray, the Executive Member for Children's Services. The original proposal for the sixth form at Bowhunt that was announced back in March 22 included provision for additional year 7 places and SEND places. I couldn't see this on the executive report that's coming up next week. Can you confirm that this is still the intention of the administration?
As you will know, Rebecca, the negotiations around Bowhunt have been complicated. And if you've read the executive report, which was published yesterday, there's some discussion about what finance has been allocated and what hasn't, and what commitment was made. And I don't want to quote you the executive decision in, I think, March or April 22, without actually looking it up. So I will give you a written answer to make sure I've got the detail right.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. Whilst the Council will now go through the correct decision-making process to rectify Bingate, there has been significant implications to the 6 employees of the contractors who were made redundant 3 to 4 weeks ago. I've been told by someone who is connected to our contractors that a month before that, they had a meeting with the council and HR regarding the redundancies. The budget cut by the council, which was not in the approved budget for this year, forced these redundancies. There were 4 sweeper drivers, now 3. There were 2 highway bin vans, now there is 1. There were 2 people emptying the bins, now there is 1. There used to be a park bin emptying, but that has been merged with the normal bins. There is now no cover for sickness or annual leave. So this has been in the works for over 2 months, and no one outside the executive.
Councillor Baker, please will you put your question?
Right.
You're making a statement.
I will do. Those redundant employments will take no pleasure in knowing that we're redoing the decision. Can you please publicly apologise to those 6 individuals who no longer have a job, no longer have an income, for your inappropriate decision-making actions?
Baker. Thank you.
Did I hear a question about Woodley?
It's about bin collections. And guess what? We have 123. Excuse me, Councillor.
Your ward
Councillor Baker, please will you ask your question very clearly,
right,
without making a statement?
I'll answer that. Can I answer his question, please?
No.
No.
Just please ask your question.
Okay. Will you apologise for those 6 people who lost their jobs, who have no longer got an income because your administration is removing the bins in Woodley, 132 of them in Woodley.
You'll need to ask a ward question clearly.
Oh, okay. I said 132 in Woodley. I can tell you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. This part of the agenda is solely for questions relating to wards, and we've established in the past many times that questions relating to the whole borough or even chunks of the borough are not admissible as ward questions.
Right.
Yeah, and,
okay. So
as the next mayor,
can I clarify then? For the bins that are in Coronation Ward, I don't have off the top of my head the numbers. In ward, I am in Coronation Ward. It's a ward matter.
Councillor Baker, you know very well the rules of this council. You sat in this chair for several years. Please ask your question clearly and quickly.
I don't know how to rephrase it. I've rephrased it to the Coronation Ward, which is my ward, so therefore it's a ward matter.
Baker, you're waffling. If
I'm
you're
not
going
I'm
to
answering
ask
your question,
please
Madam Mayor.
sit.
Forget it.
Thank you. Councillor C. Marget. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's to Councillor Fishwick. It's a nice, simple one. St James's Road in my ward. I contacted officers about 3 months ago of the condition of the road, and they did agree to put it on the resurfacing programme for next year, for which I'm grateful. Over the last few months, it's deteriorated significantly, and I'm getting continual email and phone traffic about this. And I wondered if he'd be kind enough to ask the officers to revisit the site, have another look at it, and see if they can bring it forward if that's possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for your question. There is a very tight programme for the rest of this year. It is unlikely we'll be able to bring this forward. It can be looked at and any safety defects repaired.
Thank you. That's the end of that item. Can we go on to item
Your Worship.
20?
Sorry, Madam
Sorry.
Mayor. Under section, under 4.2.12M, 4.2.20.1, I would propose suspension of 4.2.23 and 4.2.24, so we will get to the substantive matter of the motions on the agenda.
Hello, I did actually put my hand up for a ward question.
I'm sorry, Anne, you weren't on the list.
Well, I put my hand up.
Okay, you can ask your ward question now.
Thank you. So it would be to the exec member for environmental services. I understand that an income of £40,000 per year is expected from the new parking charges at the small Airfield Museum car park off Mohawk Way, Woodley. Could the residents be told what sort of improvements to facilities at Dinton Pastures they can expect? And what will be the contingency plan if the full £40,000 is not raised? Sorry.
That at the moment, you have seen, I suspect, what everybody else has seen on this. If you have a specific question about facilities, then perhaps you could put it on an email.
What are you going to spend the £40,000 on?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The £40,000 from the Airfield Museum car park off Mohawk Way, Woodley. Where is that money? What is that money going to be spent on?
You've asked your question and you've had a reply. Can you ask it very concisely and please
Possibly put it more concisely. What will the £40,000 raised from the Airfield Museum, Mohawk Way, Woodley be spent on?
It will be spent upon the countryside parks.
Well, how will the...
Sorry, there isn't a supplementary. Thank you. We move on to item 27 on the agenda. Statements by the Leader
Madam
of
Mayor,
Council.
again, I'd like to put under
Sorry,
4.2.12M, 4.2.1, that we suspend 4.2.23 and 4.2.24 so that we may get, with all the time that's been taken with questions and the executive having been held well to account in this meeting, that we move on to substantive matter of the motions.
We are going to take the next item now. Do you have a seconder for your suggestion?
Madam Mayor, it's not a suggestion, it's a motion without notice.
Thank you. Okay, right. Can anyone vote? Can you vote, please, if you're in support of David's motion? And against? Sorry. For any abstentions? No, the motion falls. Thank you. Let's go on to statements by the Leader of Council and executive members. Please, can you indicate if you wish to speak? Okay. Thank you. Bray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a short statement. I'm pleased to announce that the council is in the process of setting up its own children's homes in the borough. This is part of our long-term plans for improving services and controlling costs in children's services. These will be small homes for a total of around 6 children. In common with many authorities, we have found that the lack of available places for children nearby has led to us having to place children a long distance from the borough, several hours away from their families and friends and support networks. Not only is this less than ideal for them, but having to rely on external provision is expensive and leaves us at the mercy of the providers, many of whom operate on a commercial basis. Opening our own homes will give us an opportunity to provide a home for some of our more vulnerable children that is not only much closer, but where we can control both the quality and the costs, which is a big win for everyone.
Thank you. Stephen Conway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to report briefly to Council on the 2 meetings of the Berkshire leaders since our annual Council meeting 2 months ago. The Berkshire Leaders meetings bring together the 6 leaders of the Berkshire Unitary Councils with their chief executives and supporting officers. The meetings take place monthly in different council offices. There's been a considerable turnover of elected member personnel since the local elections in May. Only Reading has the same leader. Those of Wokingham, the Royal Borough, West Berks, Bracknell and Slough are all new. I'm pleased to report that at the first meeting, Wokingham took the chair for the municipal year with the support of all the other leaders. All the Berkshire leaders agreed that the mayoral model of devolution was not one we favoured. We agreed that if the government decided to pursue a non-mayoral option, we would be willing to consider that, subject to knowing the details and providing it produced clear benefits. We all felt that, regardless of the progress of the government's devolution plans, greater cooperation between the 6 Berkshire unitaries, or combinations of them, would be highly desirable on matters of common concern. Cooperation will sometimes take the form of joint lobbying, sometimes of joint funding bids, sometimes simply working together on cross-border projects. The meeting was amicable, with none of the fractiousness of the past. The second meeting on Monday of this week was no less amicable. The 6 leaders agreed to establish a Berkshire Prosperity Board as a vehicle for levering in external funding and in recognition of the end of government funding for the LEP next year. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor David Hare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to tell you that we're on the way to purchasing the Berkshire Care Home. This 50-bed care home will be run by the council's own social care provider, Optalis. Just hope this will be concluded in the next 8 to 12 weeks, and then we will have our own another care home. As I hope people realise, the purchase of this care home is great news. First of all, it's a priority that we support local vulnerable people. By running our own care homes in partnership with the social care company Optalis, we can help meet the demand for care, as well as reducing our own costs, providing local homes for local people, ensuring they still receive high quality care. So we are investing to save, and this is very positive, especially as the number of people needing these care homes is increasing at a fast rate. I also attended on Monday a Social Care Futures event in Woodley with a mix of people who use and provide services, as well as parents all involved. This was about how we work with and speak with people who use various services. And the day was spent looking at the way we have worked in the past with an us and them mentality, and bringing this to an equality mentality where everyone, be they a user of a service or provider of a service, is an equal partner in all transactions. I'll be quite honest, I find getting out of the old mentality, even though we didn't consciously think of us and them, it's not always easy. It's about relearning the language, about being inclusive, about talking about people rather than having other discriminatory terms, about not having special events or courses for people with problems, but rejoicing in the gloriously ordinary that we can all embrace, and making sure that all our actions, there's co-production, working with people who use the service to provide the service that they want. This is, for me, an exciting culmination of all that I've dreamt for over 40 years, and it's something that I believe is going forward strongly.
Councillor Paul Fishwick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rail delivery consultation. The Rail Delivery Group are currently holding a 3-week consultation on the closure of railway station ticket offices. The deadline for responses is the 26th of July 2023. There are 6 stations in the borough or very close to the boundary where residents use these stations that are currently have ticket offices. On the South Western Rail network, Early, Winnersh Triangle, Winnersh and Wokingham. On the Great Western Main Line, Twyford, and on the North Downs Line, Crowthorne. It is important to note that each train company has produced its own proposals. So there are 13 separate consultations running simultaneously rather than one national consultation. Having people comment on Pacific stations or at a train company level helps to ensure any views or objections expressed are recorded against the appropriate consultation. The council is unable to hold an individual executive member decision during this short time period, and I therefore urge all members of this chamber to submit their views on the proposals on behalf of their residents. However, please read the proposals fully before coming to a conclusion. Thames Valley Park and Ride site. From Sunday the 23rd of July, the Reading Station to Heathrow Rail Air Coach will now call at Thames Valley Park and Ride site. This will be a 30-minute service and passengers must book their tickets on the Rail Air website. Parking payments at the site will need to be made at the car parking machines. Also, under new arrangements with Royal Berkshire Hospital, the 300 bus service will operate from Thames Valley Park and Ride site on a 20-minute frequency to the hospital. This service is open to staff, patients and visitors. More information is on My Journey Wokingham website. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members that wish to speak? We move on to the next item, item 28, statements from council-owned companies. Stephen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm speaking as the chairman of WBC Holdings, and I can report that we've continued to seek to bring the council's housing companies into closer alignment, convening common purposes boards to provide greater coordination. We're also reviewing how best the housing companies may help the council deliver on its affordable and social housing aspirations. As chair of Loddon Homes, I can report that there's been a change of personnel on the board, with Simon Dale, the council's former interim director of Place and Growth, becoming the new managing director. I look forward to working with Simon, as do my fellow directors. The board has also been strengthened by the appointment of Nigel Bailey as a new director. Nigel will be known to many councillors, and I'm sure you will agree that his experience and expertise will be invaluable to Loddon Homes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any more statements from council-owned companies? No, thank you. We move on to item 29 on our agenda. Motion 501. I can tell you that I have received written notification that Councillor Charles Margett wishes to withdraw this motion as a response to the Mayor of London's consultation has already been submitted by the Council. As this motion has been withdrawn, we now move to motion 502. Can I have a proposer, please, for motion 502? Thank you, Councillor Caroline Smith. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Rachel Bishop Firth. Caroline, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and everybody else. I'm very lucky to have been born into an era of great national health, good education, high employment, low inflation, and housing with effective sanitation, water, and good food. More importantly, I've enjoyed many freedoms, and with the advent of the Human Rights Act 1998, many of those freedoms were enshrined in law. There are many rights that we enjoy, from the fundamental right to life, freedoms from torture and inhuman or degrading treatment, freedom from slavery, and the right to liberty and security, 13 defined rights in all. Here in the UK, we take these for granted every day of our lives. But for many people around the world, including some in the UK, this is not their reality. I cannot imagine a life where I fear being killed by bombing, snipers, or disease, neither knowing where my next meal is coming from, nor having clean water to drink, and being persecuted and coerced for wanting to express my views, the way I dress, choose who my partner in life would be, or not being able to vote. It is all very easy for us to understand why many people from war-torn places like Ukraine and state-opposed Hong Kong wish to come to Great Britain to make a new and better life and enjoy the freedoms that we have. This motion is to ensure that in becoming a borough sanctuary, we enshrine and publicly express our vision to be a welcoming town for those who wish to settle here. This pledge is an opportunity to build on the respect of those coming into a wonderful community that we live in. This ability to welcome those from war-torn Ukraine and Afghanistan and many from Hong Kong has been demonstrated in Wokingham over the last few years. City of Sanctuary status builds upon this. Many towns and cities are involved across Great Britain, from Labour-run Reading to the previously Conservative-run Peterborough Council, all recognising the importance of the City of Sanctuary status. Currently, the City of Sanctuary Local Authority Network is a movement of 50 local authorities for people seeking sanctuary. My motion is for Wokingham to join this growing, enlightened community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak against the motion?
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment to the motion. So under 4.2.12H, I would like to amend the motion. I think Democratic Services have my amended motion for distribution.
Is there a seconder for your amendment? Thank you.
So we need to say.
Yeah, we're going to circulate the amendment now.
I'd like to second the amendment, Madam Mayor. Hello, thank you. Can I have a point of order on 4.2.12K? Can I have a 5-minute adjournment so I can look a bit longer at this motion, this amendment?
No. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Can we have a vote on an 5-minute adjournment to discuss the motion? Yes, all in favour. Thank you. Against?
Adjournment.
Right, that's carried. Yes, we'll have a 5-minute adjournment.
Proposal of amendment.
Councillor Smith, you're standing.
Madam Mayor, may I seek your guidance on a point of order, please? Under the Constitution, item 4.2.13.7A11 or 2, Council Rules of Procedure amendments to motion must not negate the purpose of the motion. In this amendment, it seems that to me that the difference between an asylum seeker and a refugee is not understood. And in particular, item B, as amended, refers only to refugees. This intention of the motion as original is to apply to all peoples, asylum seekers and refugees. By making it explicitly applicable to only refugees, I believe this negates the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I welcome any amendment from the Lib Dems to add in the extra word to fit that criteria.
Thank you. Has anyone got a further amendment to this motion to change it so that it's satisfactory?
Madam Mayor, you cannot amend an amendment. You have to debate the amendment in full, and then you may amend the new substantive motion. Madam Mayor, stop grimacing, please.
So Andy needs to propose his amendment with.
Councillor Croy, it's get your own back time. Please, would you amend your amendment?
Is that?
Let's proceed.
No, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Not you, she can't.
It carries on. No, basically, we're not accepting the contesting. Okay. So it's a legitimate amendment.
I've been advised that this is a legitimate amendment and we will carry on. Councillor Croy, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much over there for your intervention. I applaud and I'm grateful to the broad sentiment behind this motion and to all the volunteers and officers who work to ensure that some refugees are indeed welcomed here. Refugees should be welcomed here, and the amendment keeps this aspiration front and centre.
Councillor Croy, can I stop you for a moment? Councillor Smith is standing.
Am I supposed to accept the amendment or not? Because I'd like to not accept the amendment. Thank you.
She'll get asked into it.
Once Councillor Croy's finished, that would be a choice. Thank you, Councillor Croy.
Thank you. I hope the clock will stop there. So, Prue, as the long-time governor of the Forest School, will know the school motto is Esse quam videri, to be rather than to see. The motto resonated with me as a pupil at the school, and as an adult, it is still an important principle. My amendment strikes out the first sentence as it is simply not true. When I moved back into the borough with my Kenyan wife and our child, we encountered what can only be described as a racist and hostile environment. As I read the racist words written onto stones thrown at our home, I could never have imagined that an MP for this borough would go on to make the words hostile environment a key political message. I have many disagreements with Redwood, but his pandering to the absolute worst parts of our community is a disgrace, as is his unwillingness to engage with his refugee residents. This motion is supposed to be about refugees, but it ignores a significant proportion of refugees in our borough, those in Home Office sanctioned accommodation or the hotel. A few years ago, parents of children from the Home Office Hotel presented themselves at Share, the food charity at Woodley. At least one of the refugee children was suffering from malnutrition caused by a lack of protein in their diet. The hotel management had refused to provide even an egg for breakfast for the children. In our borough, malnourished refugee children were denied eggs for breakfast. It also transpired that for 7 weeks, some of the children had attended local schools but had not been given free school meals. Instead, they had to rely on the miserly provisions from a hotel that would not even provide an egg for breakfast. In our borough, refugee children were treated like outcasts among their peers. Soon, the refugees that remain in our hotel will be told they have to share rooms as the Home Office attempts to squeeze even more people in. This is people, many with PTSD. This is happening in our borough. Refugees lose a lot. One of the things they risk losing is their sense of place in a community and their sense of belonging to a community. This motion makes these refugees invisible, and I do not hear the voices of these refugees in this motion. Put yourself in the shared bedroom of one of these refugees. Now imagine reading this motion. Imagine reading that local councillors had ignored your existence while patting themselves on the back for how they treat you while making not one extra iota of difference to your conditions. The aspiration is good, but we must not pretend to be something we are not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croy. Would your seconder like to speak?
Madam Mayor, I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. We go back now to the original proposal of the motion to see if the amendment is accepted.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I do not accept the amendment. Thank you.
And now we vote against the amendment. Oh, sorry. Oh, anyone against the amendment can speak. Councillor Cunnington. Councillor Cunnington first, and then Councillor Rachel Bishop Perth. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I acknowledge the sentiment and the experiences that Councillor Croy has just described. However, I believe that this badly represents Wokingham as a borough. I believe that it is a place that is renowned for being welcome and friendly. I hold my hand up to taking part in that, not just virtue signalling, but with my home, my money and my family. And I believe that that has been supported by many of my friends of all parties in this chamber. The claim of poor treatment of refugees in general in the hotels and the head office accommodation is generally unsubstantiated. And I believe that the support from the council and other services locally still does excel in its attempts to support in the best way that it can the refugees. And if there is serious evidence to support the amendment of the way that it is, it should be reported as a matter of urgency. I therefore wish to vote against the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Andy, the stories that you shared tonight are absolutely heartbreaking. I agree with a lot of this amendment, but ultimately, I'm afraid I am speaking against it. I think we would all agree that the situation for refugees and asylum seekers in this borough falls very far short of the ideal that we would like to see. This is down to central government, it's not down to Wokingham Borough Council. What I would like to say is that the more communities who sign up as cities of sanctuary, as boroughs of sanctuary, the more powerful the message to central government that people care about asylum seekers, they care about refugees. The more powerful the message we can send to Westminster that we are pushing for real improvement in the way that they are treated. The other thing it does is it sets a standard for us as a community. And when we can see that things are falling short of the standards that we would like to see, it becomes a framework, I think, for us to push for improvements in how refugees and asylum seekers are treated, to act or to lobby to improve the situation. To say that we won't become a borough of sanctuary until all refugees and asylum seekers in the borough are treated fairly, to me, I think defeats the purpose of Wokingham becoming a borough of sanctuary. And for this reason, I do call on my fellow councillors to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Stephen Conway, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak on this motion or on the amendment, but I do think it's important to say a few words. I think the first point I'd like to make is that I am in sympathy with many of the suggestions for change in this motion that Andy has put forward. On the question about the refugees in the Home Office, in the hotel, or asylum seekers in the hotel, I have to say having visited, I think the treatment there that they're receiving is appalling, absolutely appalling. They are confined largely to their own rooms. The amount of communal opportunities to mix with each other are very limited. Their opportunities to interact socially are stunted. I think we are building up all sorts of potential problems in terms of well-being and mental health. It is truly appalling. We have raised this with the Home Office, and we are continuing to raise it with the Home Office. We are not at all happy about the treatment and about the living conditions and about the safety of the hotel. But while I'm in agreement with that sentiment, I'm afraid I cannot accept point B, the amendment to point B. Once all refugees in our borough are treated fairly, we will become a supporter of the City of Sanctuary. However well-meaning that is, it effectively indefinitely postpones trying to become a supporter of City of Sanctuary. It pushes it into the unknown future because it requires us effectively to be able to demonstrate that we are treating every refugee and asylum seeker in our borough fairly. It's precisely because they are not being treated fairly that we need this motion, and we need to become part of the City of Sanctuary. We need to signal our intention to ensure that all refugees and asylum seekers in the borough are treated fairly, are treated with humanity and respect and dignity. And that is what this motion is attempting to do. Sadly, the amendment, in particular, that clause of the amendment, will have the effect of postponing this potentially forever. And I'm afraid I can't support that.
Sorry, would the seconder to the amendment like to speak now, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that. When we spoke about this amendment, the things that we wanted to push forward were that we felt were missing in the original motion are, firstly, an awareness of the desperate, dehumanizing, and I would say performatively cruel situation that is existing that is being created in the hotels, not just in Wokingham, but in Wokingham, in our borough, this is happening. The second aspect that we would like to promote is to bring in the voices, or to centre the voices of experiences and aspirations of the people seeking asylum, as well as people who have had refugee status. The importance of centering have had their refugee status granted or recognised, rather. We want to centre the voices, experiences and aspirations of people seeking asylum. And we need to take into account that may well challenge, our vision of ourselves, which is where the early part of the motion seems to speak as if everything is fine and has always been fine, and we're here to say that it is not. And finally, that there is a moral and organisational imperative to challenge what we would see the architects of a deliberately, and I would say cynically, manufactured crisis in the asylum system. And that those three elements are why we would seek to push forward this amendment, and why we would hope that our colleagues who share with us many of our aspirations would see their way to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. We need to know if you now accept the amendment. No, sorry. Oh, you've got the right to reply.
Thank you. Thank you,
should
Madam.
know this better than me.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to respond to the proposed amendment. And I have taken on board all your comments. And yes, this is why we're doing it, because we don't want that to happen again. When Maria G and I drafted this motion, we naively assumed it would be a cross-party support because it enshrines what we thought Wokingham is about when welcoming all comers, regardless of status. However, item B on this amendment ensures that we're never likely to sign up to be a borough a sanctuary, and I'm complete loss at the purpose of this amendment other to ensure we never join this initiative. So therefore, I cannot accept this amendment, mainly because as drafted, it will never happen at some unspecified time in the future. How will we know when all the refugees are treated fairly and supported within the borough? What about asylum seekers, which are excluded from this amendment by item B? What is a definition of being treated fairly? Do we make a guess at timescales? And what would our residents say? Should Wokingham Borough Council feel the need to put this pledge back on the shelf for someday, maybe in the future? Nowhere in the City Sanctuary Charter is a distinction made between asylum seekers and refugees. Why not pledge now, when we can say we are a borough sanctuary, and be proud of our commitment to those we seek to help directly now and the future, regardless of status? I'm disappointed some councillors feel the need to amend this motion because already over 50 local authorities, towns and cities have been involved. They all recognise the importance of the City Sanctuary initiatives, and because of this, I thought it would have full cross-party support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Now we move to the vote for the amendment. I'd like to see, please, who would like to vote against it? Oh, sorry, for it. Thank you. And against it? Thank you. Any abstentions? So the amendment is lost. The original motion becomes the substantive. Is anyone against the original motion? Please show. Sorry, anyone for it? I'm doing them backwards.
No.
Yeah.
Who wants to talk against? Yes.
Anyone want to speak against the original motion? No?
Go to the vote.
Right, we go to the vote. Please vote for the original motion if that's what you wish to do. Thank you. Anyone want to vote against it? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion's carried. We do now.
That's the next motion. Yes.
We have. Thank you very much. Let's move on to motion 503 submitted by Pauline Jorgensen. Pauline, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Peter.
Madam Mayor, I'd be delighted to second.
Thank you.
So proposer speaks.
Pauline, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the interests of time, I won't repeat the motion. I'm sure everybody's read it. This motion sets out a process for monitoring and reporting on all business cases with spend over 1 million, whether it be capital or revenue. The council processes for approving changes and raising and monitoring business cases is currently not transparent. Scrutiny has been asking for a proper business case for the proposed recycling waste changes for more than a year, and it's still not been forthcoming. The information we've been grudgingly given has been dribbled out, and it's been incomplete and lacking in substance. In the private sector, would not be made without a proper business case, and it shouldn't happen in local government either. This project is not alone. We have seen significant expenditure in many areas without a published financial evaluation. We need to be more businesslike. Business cases must clearly state all the annual internal and external costs and benefits of any proposed change. They should be calendarised over at least 5 years, together with an options assessment and the costs and benefits of each option. including crucially a do nothing option so that proper evaluation can take place before a decision is made. We need to clearly understand the risks around any. This motion will put in place the creation and publication of coherent cases, including any costs, all costs of any proposed change. The cases will be published and progress reports on each change published quarterly, so we and the public can see if the investment of public money is delivering the promises made to our residents. I would like to move the motion.
Thank you, Pauline. Is anyone against the motion?
Need a second.
Oh, sorry. Yes, no, we've got a seconder.
Yeah,
we've got a
anyone
seconder.
against?
Anyone against the motion? Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Thank you. There's some hands up.
You've asked if anyone wants to speak against the motion. Can we also get those that wish to speak for the motion?
Norman, so no, we only go for against the motion.
Okay, all right. Ask if people want to speak for them.
Haven't we got a list of people who want to speak for it?
No, the only people who want to speak comes to the secretary. You ask for people speaking against. Ask for speaker who wants to speak for.
Do we have to do that? No.
And
do we have to ask for people who want to speak for?
We can open it up. Speak.
On this item, not for this item.
On the motion.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Can we have a list of speakers, please, to speak on the motion, either for or against? You can go on. Okay, I got them all. Thank you. Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
Okay, right. Under the principles of openness, I certainly believe that we should have a regular view of the projects the council is working on. But I don't believe that at a full council meeting, such as the one we are currently in, I don't believe that this is the place to do this. This motion would amount to more than 30 different projects being presented to an already congested council agenda. When was the last time we finished all of the business in our agenda for this meeting? In the interests of good governance, we would also want councillors to interrogate and ask questions about each of these projects, and the place we would do this would not be here, but on our scrutiny committees. These meetings are also public, recorded, and would allow residents and councillors time to ask questions and discuss what is going on with each project. Councillors would also be able to request more information and request expert advice if necessary. Members of the public can still ask questions, watch the discussions that occur. I would start by suggesting that this is something that should be raised to the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, who receives regular performance reports as part of their terms of reference. It may also be that some of these projects belong to different committees, and this should be reviewed as part of the process too. So it is on the basis of practicing good governance and managing our time that I cannot support this motion as it stands. What is being suggested is something for our scrutiny committees, and they would be far better able to satisfy the intent of this motion and in the best interests of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Burgess, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is an already tired mantra we hear repeatedly from the Conservatives. It seems that anything that occurs in council these days, they cry, "Where is the business case?" Now, that might be a good question if it were one they had answered with any rigour in the past. Where were all these business cases in the 20 years they were running this council? For example, where was the business case for the climate emergency declaration? And the full business case for the Barkham Solar Farm, as another example, was not even presented at executive. At that time, the Conservative executive was satisfied with a one-pager. Now they are asking officers in the executive not just for business case reports, but for a report on those reports. And at a time when officer and council resources are so very stretched. If they were really intent on transparency for the public, why did they not introduce such a report in the 20 years when they were running the council? It's a distraction. The constitution of this council sets out clear rules on decision-making and governance. The council has clear procurement policies and processes to ensure it follows relevant legislation and achieves value for money within its projects and decisions. Yet the Conservatives try to reduce every decision to an unimaginative call of where is the business case. These requirements for additional documentation and reporting over and above what legislation and the Constitution require are superfluous, and therefore I do not support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Can we have Councillor Chris Johnson, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is a current action sitting with the Community and Corporate Overview Scrutiny Committee to receive an update from the council officers regarding financial reserves and matters pertaining to them. This is an indication that we already do some of this work. This report is scheduled for October to permit the existing functions of preparing WC financial statements to be completed, which includes the detail requested and thus reduced duplication of officers' workloads. This creates an indirect saving in work hours expended by officers and staff. I would recommend that the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee be the place where the requested updates in this motion be presented and debated, and that they be within the normal schedule of meetings. I also recommend that the responses are related to existing activity in preparing such submissions under existing SLAs and KPIs, and not a supplementary activity, which would detract officers from carrying out their normal duties. This would avoid, again, indirect costs in lost working hours or overtime demands. Any item of note or concern, along with a summary of reports, will be in the minutes of this committee and available for presentation to Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, which is the correct place for raising concerns to the executive and subsequently avoid the public viewing. For these reasons, I do not support this motion.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen, please.
Thank you very much. It seems to me that developing proper business cases is definitely a good first step when planning projects. Most sensible organisations would do that. If we followed, and this was discussed at the recent scrutiny meeting of corporate and community, and we agreed at that meeting to form a working group with the aim of developing a model for presenting such cases. So we've already discussed it, has been to scrutiny. So if we follow the course outlined in the motion, this will aid councillors in making sound decisions. It will also help the council explain what it's doing, why it's doing it, and describe the benefits arising for projects. It's also important that we assess how projects are progressing and the impact they're delivering, so we can quantify the benefits and feed learning into future projects. I therefore support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Councillor Prubray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion is not actually about a request to see business cases. It demands that a complete breakdown of every capital project with a value of over £1 million must be on the agenda for full council on a quarterly basis. Now, Pauline was a member of the executive, so she surely knows that the executive already receives quarterly capital monitoring reports. This is because executive is the decision-making body for every scheme in the budget under £15 million. Council's role is with schemes above 15 million and with approving the overall capital programme as part of the budget. So if the idea is to have council making decisions on individual capital schemes of £1 million or more, you can't achieve that with a motion. You need to change the constitution. And why would you want such a report on the agenda if it isn't part of Council's role to deal with these schemes? A 30-minute debate could not possibly result in sensible discussion of individual projects, and few people would get to speak. Questions would be limited to written questions. And what about the challenges of moving in and out of Part 2? That's not even taking account of how squeezed for time council meetings already are without introducing yet another thing. If the idea is simply to get further information about capital projects, then ways to do that already exist. Audit Committee can look at the money. Overview and Scrutiny could have and has had proper discussions. And you can ask questions of exec members, both on the capital monitoring and on the reports on individual projects. Nothing about any of that has changed since the Conservatives lost control. If they want to find out about capital schemes, all they need to do is to try using the routes that already exist. Finally, it will be a significant task, as others have mentioned, to compile the suggested report, pulling officers away from their planned work. And that, of course, may be the point. It would be absolutely in line with what we learned last year about the Conservatives' desire to disrupt the council now they're in opposition. They may also try to pretend this is about transparency and Lib Dems keeping things hidden. As nothing about this has changed since they were in control, the hypocrisy of that will be remarkable. This motion is not sensible. It will result in a lot of work and no benefits, and I will be voting against it.
Councillor Keith Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't actually going to speak on this, but listening to some of the conversations that have just been going on, I feel I need to just clarify a few things. First of all, the complaint that the Conservative group or administration didn't do this. Well, I'll point them to the executive meeting of 2018 when the car parking charges, and I would appreciate some respect rather than laughter, please, of 2018, where there was a full business case published for the executive. There was a consultation. There was a 1-year pilot trial. So we do this. So I'm sorry, you're wrong. In terms of, I fully understand the time constraint, but to use the mantra that the Liberal Democrats did when they were in opposition time and time again, just have another meeting. Just do another meeting. But I have a solution to that. If you read the motion carefully, it's not asking for a debate. It's actually just asking for a report, which is providing data to 54.
Councillor Baker, could you please stop? Someone has their hand up. Thank you. Councillor Ferris.
I'm sorry. I listened to Keith, and remember he was leader for a period of time.
Yeah. Councillor Ferris, is this a point of order?
I wanted to speak. I put my hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Jumping the gun. Oh, I beg your pardon. I got called. I thought you finished. I fallen asleep.
You had your hand up at the wrong time.
I'm quite happy to be the cure for insomnia for you, Lindsay. Just take some water with it later. Anyway, so this is asking just for a report. It's not asking for a debate, just a report. And we are 54 councillors who should have that information. It's great to say, go to this overview and scrutiny, go to that meeting, or this other meeting. We don't have the time to do that. I think it's the right of every one of the 54 members to have this information. Therefore, I will definitely be supporting.
We've added you to the list, but not yet. Not quite. Councillor Croy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's something I hope that Pauline, can I just before I go on congratulate you on your selection as parliamentary candidate for Well, I won't wish you good luck. You'll understand that. But congratulations. And could I just ask the parliamentary candidate for Woodley that when her prospective scheme to turn Woodlands Avenue in Woodley into a one-way street, which was soundly rejected by the residents of Woodley, did they reject it for the lack of a business case or because they understood the business case? If you could address that in your summing, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croy. Councillor Stephen Conway.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think my colleagues have already explained why we can't support Pauline's motion. I'm afraid it's simply not practical. Meaningful consideration of reports, and I don't actually see the point in reports being presented to full council unless they're going to be considered and discussed. Meaningful consideration of reports on a multitude of projects would quite simply clog up already full council meetings, squeezing out opportunities for debate on other subjects that are of real interest to our residents. I can't imagine that's what Pauline really wants. Full council is quite simply not the place for this kind of scrutiny. For practical and constitutional reasons, the council's overview and scrutiny committees, which have time to explore subjects in depth and make recommendations, are the appropriate setting. So I, like many of those who've spoken so far, will not be supporting this motion.
Now, Councillor Ferris, it's your turn.
I wasn't going to speak on this. I will say some positives because I have stood up in this county chamber for quite a few years and said we need better business cases. And I do agree. And I think they need to be much better and more professional. And there's a lot of information that's not involved. And I've criticised the business cases that we have done. And whilst I think they're better, there's still a way to go. So I will make that point. But the reason I'm standing up is I couldn't help. But when Keith spoke, he said all 54 councillors should have the information. Well, I remember back in 2016 when we were taken off virtually every working group there was except the statutory ones and not allowed any information about anything. So I'm sorry, that's hypocrisy of the 10th order. And you did it and you were proud of it. So it's hypocrisy. You're standing up 54 to everybody down. It's because you're in opposition. And tough luck.
Councillors, and now the seconder of the motion, Councillor Harper. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any project manager knows that a good business case is the cornerstone of a successful project. Regular reviews during the delivery are essential to ensure that the project still meets its original objectives. Things change between the start of a project and the final delivery. Commercial environments change, inflation impacts costs, technology evolves, customers change habits. As an organisation, we should be constantly reviewing all high-value projects against the updated business case. And we shouldn't be afraid to stop projects which are no longer meet the original objectives or provide value for money. A good example of a business case that should be reviewed regularly is the Barkham Solar Farm. The original business case approved by the executive in July 2021 by the Conservative administration had costs of £20 million and a peak generating capacity of 36 megawatts. The cost of borrowing was an historic low, inflation was 2.9%, and domestic electricity 20 pence per kilowatt hour. The revised business case presented in October 22 now had costs of 26.8 million, a lower generating peak capacity of 29 megawatts. The cost of borrowing was creeping up, as was inflation. However, the cost of energy was at an all-time high, and the business case predicted it would continue to rise. Now, we have peak borrowing costs, a delay which due to high inflation will increase the cost to deliver the project. And to make matters worse, the cost of electricity on the markets is back to the levels it was in September 2021, a scenario not predicted just 9 months ago. If the business case of the Barkham Solar Farm was presented to Council quarterly, members can have confidence in the continuing viability of the project. Extending this to all projects over £1 million will provide a solid governance structure and avoid the financial mess we see at Slough, Woking and Croydon. Thank you.
Nonsense.
Thank you. Now, members, we're going to move to the vote. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Pauline.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm completely astonished by some of the statements that have been made tonight. Some people obviously haven't actually read the motion. Prue, I didn't say it was capital. I said it was a holistic view of all the costs of projects, not just capital. The idea is to have visibility of what is actually happening, not a single view of just the capital. Reporting on reserves is not the same as a business case. And by the way, we've been waiting for the reserve information that we wanted reports on for about 9 months now. So it's hardly exactly monitoring real time, is it? I was surprised that Imogen and Stephen, who appear to actually agree with the principle of making things more transparent, didn't propose an amendment if they were so worried about clogging up full council to take it to overview and scrutiny again. Would she be happy to accept that or an amendment to say it would be going to audit? Or is she just trying to obfuscate? The information being asked for is critical. I'm trying to improve the process and move us forward to proper governance. It's not acceptable. What are you trying to hide? It's clear that policies and processes which currently exist are not being followed. For example, caddy liners and the decisions on stopping the waste bin clearance without anybody apparently having made a decision at all, or just issuing a press release. It's completely ridiculous. And finally, if monitoring and preparing business cases distracts officers, one wonders what they're currently doing. If they don't know how much a project is going to cost and how much they're currently spending on it and whether they're delivering the benefits so that they can adjust the project on the way through, then what on earth do the Liberals think they are doing?
Thank you, Pauline. Rolling up to 11 o'clock, we've just got time for a vote. So can I please have a show of hands to vote against the motion? Sorry, in favour of the motion. Either hand will do. Thank you. And against the motion. I know it's getting late, but I can see now that the motion falls. Good night and thank you very much, members. Have a safe journey.